I'm really pleased to introduce Dinesh around sharing best practices for transition to a hybrid workplace. You just heard some really great suggestions on how to do it. Charles just finished with, how do we use a growth mindset? How do we reimagine what it would look like? But many organizations are really contemplating how are we going to do that best coming up? How are we going to do it safely? And Dinesh and his organization, we really searched to say, well, who's doing this? Who's supporting organizations? Who's doing this well in the marketplace? And what I was really impressed when I came across this organization is they've been doing it for a long time, especially in Asia, who have been back to work for many, many months. So I'm going to introduce Dinesh right now, and he's going to talk about some of the successes that they're seeing, bringing people back to work, and also leveraging some of the technology and a platform to make sure that businesses stay relevant in the future and harness the benefits of transitioning to this hybrid workplace. So, are you there?
Yep, I'm right here, Scott. And that's a very hard act to follow, the last one that we just had. So I'm going to try and keep everybody pretty engaged. But thank you, Scott. Yep.
Yeah, great. So share with us. Share with us, a little bit about what you've. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, cool. So what I'll do is I have some slides, if that's okay. I'm not going to go into statistics because I'm sure you all have a lot of data and it's evolving. I think the same CEO of a large bank a couple of weeks ago talked about open seating, talked about, hybrid working, and that's the way it's going to be. And a few days ago said, I'm tired of Zoom and I really want to get back to work, right? So I think it's changing and it'll continue to evolve. We have been at this now. Of course, we were selling solutions for the flexible workplace, up to about maybe a couple of years ago. And then during COVID, of course, things changed. And we've been enhancing our product to kind of get it right. But we've had a lot of learnings as we've done deployments over the last 12 months. And they started out with just conversations around safety. They have shifted to flexibility, to culture. And I think I'll try and keep my conversations restricted basically around that area, right? But, basically what I'm finding is that 12 months ago, the whole world moved over to remote, and then they started making plans to get back in different parts of the world sometime around the August, September timeframe. And it was medical companies, it was banks, and it was others, who really want to, at least would have 10 to 15% of their organization that wanted to get back. And, it was interesting because if it's even one single employee that's going to come back to work, you still have to think about workplace readiness. You still have to think about all the safety protocols that you kind of put in place. And I was talking to a lot of people and they said, generally people and companies wanted to take a no stones unturned approach. And that's what people started to do. That's my back to work section. Now, since September to now, I think many companies around the world have been able to get their workplace ready. They have health declarations that they put in place. They want to just make sure that everybody that's coming back, is sort of well, right? I think that's the first priority, right? They wanted to make sure that things are contactless and just making sure they have enough sanitizers, masks, etc. And then very quickly, as people started to get vaccinated, and in many countries, I look at Australia as a great example. They've been open now for the last 3 or 4 months. So I just wanted to peek in to see what is going to happen when a country opens up, right? They have rules and regulations that 100% can come back. Singapore has 75% that just got changed to 50. And then we're working with so many companies in the US where they're just preparing now. But I think everybody agrees that in the new normal, the key word is going to be flexibility.
Yeah.
All the customers that we work with hired in many different locations around the world. The notion of you have to be a person that works very close to your own organization. If I look at ourselves, we almost doubled our workforce, right? And honestly, I don't know where those people are based. That question was off the interview list. We did not want to know. We wanted to hire the best talent. And we're not thinking about, honestly, they moving back basically to the, if they are in a zone where we're in office, great. If they're not, that's fine. But the whole thing around flexibility has been huge. And for that, the workplace also had to be prepared, because you can't you can't change work and not think about the workplace as well. So I'll share some insights there. But very quickly, when these offices started to open up, we found workplace culture becomes absolutely top of mind. People, okay, safety granted, flexibility and the ability to choose granted, but then workplace culture. For me, 6-7 months ago, we had done a deployment for a large global bank, and I happened to go visit that customer. And I spoke to one of the employees that was sitting in the office. There weren't too many people. And I asked that employee, I said, just tell me, how do you feel? You've been at home and now you kind of come back. And, he kind of turned around to me and said, this is terrible. And I said, why? He said, because I'm back in office. None of my colleagues are here. I'm still on the Zoom call. I was feeling lonely at home, so I wanted to come back. And he said, it's been basically a terrible experience, right? I'd much rather be sitting at home. At least, I'm in the comfort of my own place, right? And so we started to think about the fact that, how is this all going to get sorted out? So I asked him questions like, what would you like it to be, right? And he said, I'd love to know if my team's back. I'd love to, we're working on this project. Is everybody that's going to be working on the project, are they going to be coming back for the days that I'm here? I'd like some way for that to happen. We started to dig deeper and we spoke to the manager, and the manager said, yeah, it's very frustrating because I get phone calls from my team saying, do I go in today? Do I not go in today? Who's coming in? Because we have a 50% capacity limit within the office, right? And so the whole thing around getting the right person at the right place, at the right time, and of course at the right cost, is something that we are starting to see is becoming a huge challenge for companies. And managing all of this, especially if you have a whole bunch of employees, becomes a pretty big challenge, both for the manager, because it's his team, for the team members, and also for the admin who doesn't know how many people are going to be coming in, and for HR, because obviously you want to plan engagement around the fact that, yeah, I got 10 teams back during this week. So is there some engagement that I can plan? The whole re-entry strategy, the change management strategy has to be very well thought out, right? So to us, workplace culture becomes a significant part of the conversation as people have now figured out what to do around flexibility. And then in the future, blending between working at home, I'm at home, I love my comfort, I control the air conditioning, I like my lighting, I like my seat. Now I'm going to go back to work. How do I continue to have a similar experience? I've been at home very long, right? Big top of mind for a lot of people that we work with. Productivity. I'm used to now working at home. Of course, hours have got longer, but I'm productive in a certain manner. Will productivity improve, reduce, increase as I go back to work? And how can I make that happen? Our sense was that in the future workplace, when you get teams to work together, when you get them to be together on the days that they choose, productivity is much higher. We had a lot of instances of people going back to work, picking up the phone and calling, which floor are you on? Because I'm sitting over here, and they're looking for each other, right? And of course, half of them never showed up. And so everybody had to be on Zoom. That's a productivity killer, by the way, right?
Yeah.
So I think the thought around productivity, the thought around safety, health, and wellness is not just for today. We were all great at basically managing the homes, looking at quality of air and things like that. But is the workplace going to be ready to be able to do that? But these are some of the things that are going to be very important as we think of the future of the workplace. So I've really broken this down into 5 steps of things that we're hearing. Most companies are at different stages of the journey, but you will evolve from one stage to the other as time goes by. And that's why they have been bucketed down in this way. Okay. And Scott, if there are any questions anybody has, I don't know what the format here is, but,
Sure.
just
please, if you have questions, just put them in the chat, and then I'll be bringing those into the presentation. So if you have any questions.
Yeah, thanks. So we have now, done basically our technology deployments across the world. So we're in about 70 cities across 17 countries. So we're learning from, deployments in the US, and we're learning from deployments in Australia, in Europe. Many of you are doing global, you work in global companies. So I think when it comes to culture, when it comes to the whole workplace strategy, when it comes to all of these different things, I think it's very important that you think of this globally, right? Because things are going to evolve, and there have been a lot of learnings that are spanning across the globe, and things are changing as countries are opening and shutting, right? So lessons learned. Everybody talks about the fact that, okay, before that, right? Structurally, one interesting thing I'm finding is that in the previous world, the workplace teams were working in one silo, right? So you'd have a workplace leader and you'd have a workplace team, real estate team working on stuff. And then you had the HR organization, which was working mainly on the employee issues. And then you had technology, which was doing, I think for the first time, all three teams need to come together. The workplace has to think about what the new way of work is going to be like. And so it's very, very critical that both the workplace leader and the HR leader are like completely aligned. And then technology has a huge role to play, because this whole experience of when people are working in hybrid has to be managed by a large extent using technology, right? So these were just some of the lessons that we learned, right? Neighborhoods. In the previous way of a workplace, there was just a concept of, here's my fixed desk, I leave my stuff, and I come in every day at a particular time, and then I go back. And now that's not going to happen, right? Most companies agree that in hybrid, they don't want wasted space. And so they are going to move to some kind of way in which employees select which days and things like that. So the whole neighborhood approach is coming in, a neighborhood for a team, a neighborhood for a department, right? Which days are people going to come back to work? Interesting. Nobody chose Monday because, just kind of got extended. Fridays over flooded because Friday by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon or 5 o'clock, they just wanted to go down to the pub and have a drink, right? Good for the employee, maybe not so good for the company, or maybe good for some companies. But you've got to really think about the distribution of when the teams are going to be coming in on what particular days. But I would have never thought that this would actually be a particular challenge. I think, like I said, getting the teams back, some companies want the manager to control that. Some companies say, well, I want to empower the team leader to make decisions around when their team members come back. In some companies, they want the employee to be able to control that. Choose your days, be able to shift things around. I think that's huge, right? Rostering is definitely something which we're seeing solve a lot of problems, because doing this on Excel sheets, WhatsApp and all, that's really sort of cumbersome, right? Also, another thing is that most definitely in the new world, majority of the companies agree that even though there's a little bit of employee toil with this, but the world of fixed desk is gone. And so they're going to have free seating and people just choose that, right? Now, is that great for the employee? Well, in one sense it is, because then they get to pick and choose and things like that. It's great for the organization because they save real estate space, but it does create its own challenges around, okay, now I got to go select a location, I got to select a desk. But if you can make that easy, if you can really make that simple and put teams together, I think that solves a significant problem. Now, this is where I say the HR teams and the policies and rules and the workplace rules need to come nicely together, because without that, that would kind of fail. And so does technology.
Yeah. So Dinesh, we do have some questions coming in the chat, so I just want to kind of pose you there. But what I know you shared some of the lessons learned, but can you just describe a little bit more around, like Gina mentioned Australia or some of these countries that have been back? What are some of the main themes? What are you finding in addition to some of these lessons learned? How are they integrating your solutions into what they're doing in their organization?
Sure. So there are two things that I'll share, right? So one, the first lesson that I learned was, so who wants to come back, right now? People with young kids and they're struggling a little bit to work out of home definitely want to come back because they just want a little more peace and quiet, get away from the home. Second is that especially younger people, when they have flatmates, and so it becomes a little noisy because a lot of people are there at home, they wanted to come back. So you will find that it's not everybody that wants to come back. It really depends a lot on their home situation, right? That was a huge learning that we had from Australia. The second thing was we went out and just, putting on my technology hat, we went out and built all the technologies for the workplace, only to realize that if you don't merge it with the workforce, that's a problem. It's not about booking a desk and showing up and doing all the things in the workplace. It's also about knowing where your teams are. It's about knowing which days can I actually go and work, and it's about the whole rostering piece. So the technology, both the technologies coming together, that really helps solve the problem. We did work with Toyota Financial Services, biggest learning that we had, and I think the two coming together has been pretty good, right? Safety is very important, but I wouldn't say, I think, a lot of that gets taken also by the government, right? They have rules, regulations, and things like that, particularly here, at least in Asia, that's what we're finding. But inside, just maintain social distance and take that a little bit more seriously, right? So.
Yeah. So just curious, another question that was posted, you mentioned like that lonely employee, right? So they're lonely at home, they wanted to come in the office, and now they're lonely there and they're on Zoom. What are you seeing organizations doing to address that, collaboration, the inclusion of bringing people together and creating that level of engagement for, say, that lonely associate?
Yeah. So I think the first thing is that visibility of who's coming and is my team coming, and making sure that you have that information, right? So you make a decision around it. In many cases, the organization pushes that, right? They say, hey, you need your team to be at least meeting a couple of times a week or 3 times a week, particularly if you're in particular projects. So that's one very important thing. I think the second thing really is you've got to plan HR engagement. I'll tell you one customer, he said they had teams coming in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then on Tuesday and Thursday. The teams that came in on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, they had a few people that were organizing different things, like a little lunch and stuff like that. Employees felt great. The ones coming on Tuesday and Thursday, well, nobody was taking the ownership. It was kind of a little dull. So I think HR's got a role to play to have visibility of who is coming and then plan events around it. But just different things, conversations, surveys, and things like that, right? That's what keeps them engaged.
Yeah. So, to that point, question that came up is how do you balance employee entitlement to decide when to work and business delivery and still empower the staff? So how have you seen that play out?
Yeah. And look, I think it depends a lot on the company culture. Also within that, there are certain teams where the manager is taking responsibility. Maybe the manager is like that, or because they're working on projects that need decisions to be made where teams have to come back together. You can't leave it on I think one of the things is there's no one size fits all. For certain teams, you'll have to empower the manager. That's the only way they'll get the best out of their teams. For some teams, you'll just have to let it be very, very flexible. Depends on the job function. Sales in particular, they need to come back because we're finding that sales teams, they have a lot going on. There are customers they need to talk to. There's a whole, bunch of things they need to have in place. But there are other departments like technology coders. I mean, well, they could just, they're probably more effective sitting at home.
All right. Last question, I'll let you move on, but have you seen much consolidation of commercial real estate globally? So are you seeing companies reduce their kind of physical footprint?
Huge, Scott. And we've had from banks cut out 30-40% that aggressively because they've decided hybrid's here to stay for the next 2 years, right? Smaller companies in particular, they're making really fast decisions because they think they can save a lot of space. That's, I think, universal across all the deployments that we have done. There's a lot of underutilized space that people can get sort of rid of, right? That's just not neat.
Great. Thanks for that. I'll let you continue. I know some other
Yeah.
things.
So I think I've broken this down into 5 steps, and I know I have very little time left, but I think it begins with the workforce. I think you determining through technology, and of course I'm a techie, so I'll tell you, use software to do this. Define the flexible days and hours, categorize your teams into, some jobs just have to be at work all the time. And so they're in one category. You have to have rules and think about them. Then you have the flex works, and then you have the ones that will always be at home, right? You hired them, they're very happy, or they've moved out, they're living in the suburbs, they don't want to travel 2 hours, their job still can be done. I think that's the next piece. And put that into the software, right? Put that into the tool, and then determine the teams that need to work together. The notion of departments was good when everybody was sitting and you'd have different people. Yeah. One person for marketing, one person say go in a meeting room. Now it's a lot virtual, and so obviously you need to determine the teams and how they work together. In your workplace, you need to create those neighborhoods so that people can pick and choose. They're always sitting together, and obviously software will help you with that. And of course, match your scheduling plan with the HR engagement. So I think this is step one. If you got this right, and if you obviously have all of this managed through technology, I think at least you will start understanding your organization much better. You'll have a lot of data coming in. Give the employee the ability to change a roster if, let's say, the manager has decided that. I mean, that much amount of flexibility should be there, right? Of course, just from a tech point of view, all this thing around transparency is important. Your floor plans, where's my neighborhood? Where do I go and sit? Okay, you are saying this desk is not fixed. I'm used to bringing certain things along from home. Now, where can I keep those? You need to have lockers, right? Because while you're saving space, you need to spend money on putting things like lockers in. And so when I wake up as an employee in the morning, I should be able to book my desk. I should be able to see where my team is, book the locker. If you have small parking, see if there's parking available, and do all of those things in one click of a button and show up to work. The worst is when they show up to work and you say, oh, sorry, we're a limit of 50. You don't have a seat, go back home. Or like I said, you come and you don't know who's there and you feel pretty bad about it, right? So that's the second thing, is digitize your spaces. The third is, at home, these people are all used to digital experiences, from pre-ordering food to, pretty much everything, service requests and things like that. You need to give them that digital experience. Too many apps, too many things to do don't work. In our world, you need to have everything consolidated, from picking my days when I want to come, to my desk, to my rooms, to understanding all the engagement that's going on. You need to digitize your employee experience. Hybrid is not easy. It's difficult. You need to give the tools back to the employees, right? Of course, give back unused space. That's where the ROI is. Spend it on things that you could do differently for your employees. I love this one, right? Pre-pandemic, 100% of the space was used 50% of the time. Post-pandemic, hybrid workplace, go with 70% of the space, give up 30, but use it 100% of the time. So huge opportunity to be able to save space. And of course, I'm a big believer that the old world of here the workplace technologies and here the workforce technology is gone. That's what we disrupted. So I love it because it's got to come together. Otherwise, the employee experience is broken. You as HR or workplace don't have all the data to make all the right decisions. Where technology is heading to is AI. The teams should not be actually the ones choosing spaces, choosing dates. That's where AI comes in. It's a recommendation engine. I'm an employee. It looks at who do I normally work with, which team am I on. It tells me, it recommends to me my work days. It recommends to me the spaces I could be sitting in. It does all that. I accept the recommendation. Perfect. We're getting close. We're not 100% right now, but I think with a lot of data that's coming out in different parts of the world, right, that we're gathering, we're coming to, I would say, in the 85 to 90% accuracy of recommendations. That's just getting better. Our goal is to get to 90+%. That's when the employees will have a very cool experience. And of course, you as HR or workplace planner should also get recommendations saying, you know what, You have these teams coming back. This is what is happening. How much space can I give up? Or what are the things around engagement that I can be doing so that I have more people feeling better, and you're getting all your survey data and things like that, right?
Mhm.
You got to think of it from a technology point of view as an end-to-end stack, right from digitizing the employee experience to rostering, where they pick and choose the dates they want, and then obviously your entire forecasting, chargebacks, and things like that, right? Time is here and now. I feel very strongly around hybrid because I believe that it's given all of us an opportunity to hire from anywhere. It's given opportunity for people to work from where they are. You can't keep it, well, completely open, but I think a balance and mix of both is important. The workforce integration coming together is a great risk mitigation strategy, and I think a huge competitive play. The ones that go bold and put this in place, I think are going to be great employers and create that human-centric workplace, right? So that's what I wanted to share, Scott. I'll open it up for any questions that anybody may.
You know what? Thank you. And I know there's a lot of requests for the deck, so we'll make sure that the deck is available. Just some of the questions was, how do you balance the people that are fully remote with those that are hybrid? Or how are companies responding to that challenge?
So look, I think that, at the end of the day, they're fully remote because either they're in a COVID situation or that's what they choose to be. And that's where I think, at least in companies that we've spoken to, the way they measure their people is also going to change because you're out of sight, out of mind. And that's a huge disadvantage. There is definitely the whole digital equality thing, right? We still find, at least in teams where people are complaining that some can't turn their video on because of background issues. They don't have enough bandwidth at home. So yeah, you'll have to figure out how to deal with those situations because those employees will get disadvantaged. You also have to think about productivity. I'm putting off my video, I'm on mute and don't know what you're doing. You have to trust your employees because if you don't trust them, then they're just the wrong employees and you shouldn't have hired them in the first place, right? So I think a lot of planning has to go on there as well.
So there's also talk about new employees, right? So a lot of organizations continue to onboard new employees. How do they fit and how do they come into an experience like the one you're creating?
Yeah, I think they're the ones that first want to come back to work. They've met nobody, and you will find that. Sorry, I should have covered that. It's the category of the ones that can't work from home for all basically the reasons. But it's also the new employees. It's also the younger ones that they need to cook food at home. They need to do all those things, right? They're very happy to come back because they like to go down, pick a coffee or just pre-order their meal. But they fall into that category. The ones that are new, you will find are the first ones that came back. But you hired remote, you can't bring them in now, right? That's too much of a risk to take. I think that you'll have to figure out how to get them blended in. But your workplace has to be ready in a flexible manner to be able to welcome them back at some point in time.
Yeah. And, question for you. I know you have, the client slides that you shared. I mean, you've got hundreds of clients. Just curious, maybe you can just describe what's the engagement process like? How much time if somebody's on this call right now and says, we're trying to figure this out, which is a lot of the people that are probably on the call. How do you engage with them and how fast can you go? Because I know people are starting to bring people back into the workplace slowly. Some have declared, after Labor Day, we're hearing different dates around that. But what do you give us a little sense of, how would somebody engage with your organization?
Yeah. So we have teams basically across the US. And what they do is they get into a call. We encourage our customers to download the software, try it out. We do a little training for them. I think that gives them the ability to start onboarding teams, employees, floor plans. I would say usually a couple of weeks and you're up and running. Our software now has been in operation for a while. So we just didn't build it just now, right? And so it's been in operation for a while. So it's been tried and tested. But I still think, Scott, 2 weeks after getting all the data and putting it in, companies are up and running. Employees could be downloading stuff and they're up for hybrid.
Yeah, that's amazing. I had the chance to take a look at the software and in the application. It's so intuitive. It's so easy. You talk about making that experience just in one place. You've done a phenomenal job. And what I'm really excited is, maybe even our next summit to hear how the AI is working, right? So the more that we can take maybe that burden off the manager and the employee and start using AI to start bringing the teams together and ensure the highest productivity, the highest collaboration. I think that's going to be essential. So I really like where you're going based on our previous conversations, but also what you shared here today.
No, Scott, thanks. In fact, yeah, we haven't announced it. It'll be out in PR, and I'm sure Kelly, our marketing, will kill me, but we just won the American Award, the Stevies. We actually got a bronze category for our AI capability for the workplace. So I'm very excited about that. And I'm looking forward to deploying this a lot more, right, to companies right now.
Yeah, no, obviously it's been, great to get to know you, great to get to know your organization. I see that you're clearly out in front and you're really aligned around creating that experience, both for the employee and the organization, so that people can be as productive as they possibly can be in this hybrid environment. And just really appreciate your insights, because you're way ahead between all the work in Asia and Australia and all the other countries that have been bringing people back to work. Is there any question that comes up from your perspective, organizations? Is there a common question that you'd want to answer when you're looking to engage them, or a question that they seem to come up with all the time?
I think it's really about this whole process and engine of decision making on who comes on what days back to work, and whether an employee chooses it, whether the manager decides that. I think that's becoming a huge part of the discussion point, because if you can get that right, at least from our learning, it's been when you get the right place, right person, right sort of desk and things like that, your survey ratings around that experience with hybrid are very high. If it's manual through spreadsheets and different for, desk booking, different for workforce, just very messy. Employees get very confused, and the last thing they need right now is to be more confused. Yeah.
Absolutely. Jean, any closing comments for you?
Yeah, I do have. So thank you very much, Dinesh. It was a pleasure to have you present from a global perspective. I don't know if you saw the news this morning, but a number of leading financial institutions are unilaterally saying everyone's going back to work on May 17th or June 12th. Is this what you're seeing globally, or is this just happening among select financial institutions in New York City?
No, I think we're starting to see this now. I think we're starting to see that this is getting real. It's the June to September timeframe. But, having said that, we've also seen people go back, and then 3 months later, there's a little bit of a pullback, right? So everybody's got to be ready for that. I think that pendulum is going to continue. And, you just have to plan for that. So just kind of put that in your flexibility and planning as well.
Yeah. I think finally, we talked in the last session on a topic that I feel very strongly, and that's the remote workers, integrating them, if they choose to be predominantly remote, is really an inclusive issue, right? How can they be included and a visible part of team meetings when 3/4 of the people are in person and a quarter are remote? Share with us any strategies you've seen that seem to be working for dealing with this important issue.
Yeah, so just on our app, right, we call it Jumpry. I'm remote, and especially when I was remote, one of the feedback I got from my own teams was everything that we did as an organization, we put onto Jumpry. And so when an employee got up, they got to see pretty much everything that was happening in their organization. We were doing a whole bunch of remote things, and so are other companies. I think putting that together, creating an engagement platform, which also gives them a view of what's happening in the workplace, I still believe keeps them a little more connected with the organization. Now, you have to have planners that plan, what are the things that we can do, which is different from what they're doing anyway, right? I mean, everybody's doing some kind of Zoom exercise or yoga or things like that. I think beyond that, right? The one I loved was And I know that maybe tea is not a big thing, but one of our customers in the UK, they actually told me that they ran a program and they had this, you had to bring 5 tea bags and then you had to try it out. And there was a tea sort of master that was there. They just loved it. Like the employees are really cool because something very different, right? But kept them engaged. And they really sort of liked it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, right? How to plan these sort of water cooler events, if you will, if you're not in person. And I think that's it, Scott. Yeah. If you want to say thank you very much for joining us. This is our first time engaging with you and your organization, and we hope to do a lot more work together. Thank you.